Alright, so today I'm with Mickzerofive, who's the co-owner of Four Seasons Gaming, the biggest Australian Quake community. So, how are you doing, man?
Uh, yeah, good. The biggest, I think it's the only at the moment, although there's a few streamers that are creating their Quake communities as well, which I encourage, and I like to see the diversity. But yeah, man, I'm good, really good. I just got back from 2 weeks in Queensland. So if you don't know the map of Australia very well, I live down south, South Australia, and my work is based out of Queensland. So they just had me up there doing some training and stuff like that. So exhausting, man. 2 weeks. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad to be home just in time for Christmas. So.
I get the feeling, yeah. Christmas arriving, a lot of hype. All right, so my first question, the one I always start with, of course, where does your username come from?
Yeah, so I watched some of your videos and saw you open with this, and I was like, all right, so I got to create a story for it now. So it started when I started gaming at an early age, like 14, 15. And I was called Getz back then, Getz, like the car Hyundai Getz. That's where I got it from. And my first LAN that I ever went to, I was really young, and I knew some people that, like, I was meeting people there because I played in a community for an old Arnold tournament mod called Tactical Ops. And when I was there, everyone was calling me Getz, and I just felt a bit awkward to me. Like, I was like, I have a name, like, you can call me by my first name, it's all good. And then after that, I was kind of started thinking I need a name change. Like, I'd rather people use my name or have my name in it somehow. And then I started playing Warcraft 3, the old Frozen Throne Blizzard game. And that game, on the servers, you had to have a unique name, similar to Quake Champions. So I wanted to have my name in it. I didn't want to go with Michael. My dad was also called Michael, so he took the nickname Mike. And then I took the nickname Mick because I didn't really like Mickey. And then from that, I was like, all right, so it'll be Mick something. And then I was like, what will the something be though? Because Mick's already taken on Azeroth. And then I, at the time, was playing soccer in the year 2005. And I had a stellar season. At the end of the year, we get presented with awards for playing. Or like some people get awards for different areas. So like your MVP, your best and fairest, your coach's player, and your player's player. And I was very fortunate that year that I had a good year, and I actually won 2 of the 3 awards. So I won coach's player and best and fairest. And so that year just resonated with me, and I wanted to never forget like what I'm capable of. And so that's where the 05 comes from. It didn't start off all spelt out like that. It was Mick_05 in Warcraft. And I was like, that was when I was like 17. And that was a bit kiddish. So I decided to just change it to all words. And yeah, that's how the name came about.
All right. And it's a really in-depth story. I like it. All right, so you're mostly known as basically for what you do for Four Seasons Gaming. So organizing tournaments, conducting interviews, and basically just like trying to promote the game and make the Australian Quake community grow as much as possible. But before this, did you compete in tournaments? Like, did you first have a history as a player and then moved on to basically community creation? Or did you like immediately have this interest in organizing tournaments and doing all this for the community?
I always had an interest to be a leader or like some sort of authoritative figure, not through a lust for power or anything like that, but because I've always had really obsessive organizational skills. It all kind of started when I first started competitive gaming. So obviously I started out as a player, again with Arnold Tournament, and I was playing in those communities, and I was such a little shit. Like I was like 16, 15, and I was participating in those tournaments that the guys used to run in the old communities that I was a part of. And I loved it, man. I loved the feeling of competition. I was heavy into sports as a junior and throughout most of my life. So I was really competitive. I got into competitive gaming pretty much straight away in my first game. And then I always wanted to be like a moderator or an admin or something like that. But because I was such a little shit, I would always get rejected. And so that almost like fueled the fire. I was like, I can do this. And it was almost like no one gave me a chance. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And then when Quake Live came out, I started playing that. I never played Quake 3. Or I played a couple of games of Quake 3 at school or whatever, but never really like with the community, Australian community or anything like that. So when Quake Live came out, I was searching for a community. And there was actually one at the time called Premium Gamer, run by a guy called Noatix back in the Quake 3 days. He sort of carried it on to Quake Live. But I was like, when the first Quake Live first came out, I was like, where are the tournaments? Like, I just want to play in some tournaments. And nothing was really going. And I saw it as an opportunity to put up a website. So I put up PHBB forums and then just made a big forum post saying I wanted to run a tournament. I already knew how tournaments run because I played in them before. And then from that, I just saw like a snowball of interest from players. Like first tournament was like 16 players, then 32, then 64. And then I think I capped out at about 128. But just that feeling of running my first couple of tournaments, like it was very stressful, of course, but after that, I was kind of like really set in wanting to build something, and people just constantly giving me like good feedback, good vibes, and kind of motivated me to just stick with it. But I continued playing. It was a balancing act for me, playing and being an admin, because obviously, you can do both, but it's very hard because like shit happens in the other games while a tournament's going on, and you got to fix the shit that's happening in the other games, and it definitely made it hard. So I'd say a lot of the time I took a back seat, but I always played competitively. And then you might have heard of Phrase and Kama, who played in Quake Live. Maybe not if you're not from Quake Live, but the Phrase was a big name in Europe. He went over to Europe and played, but he was my teammate back in the day. We played our first competition together in CTF, and we got it to the grand finals and got stomped on. And then from that, it was just like all of us had this desire to be the best and beat the team who just stomped on us. So we put in the hours and then come back, and then it was almost like a dying off period where people sort of started to lose interest in Quake Live, but the team that stomped us kept playing. And so that was like the final boss that we had to overcome. And we ended up just putting in the hours. We beat them in the CTF grand finals the second time around. And then after that, we mopped the floor with everyone, like TDM, Instagib, Freeze Tag. Like we were undefeated for like 4 or 5 years. So there's always a running joke that I got carried a little bit because I was more of a strategic person in the team, as opposed to like that guy who'd rack up kills or take all the armors or be the stacked player. But I think it's a team effort, and yeah, I mean, every good ship needs a anchor. So yeah, that's where that one goes. But yeah, so definitely competitive first, and then tournaments later.
All right. So now regarding the history of the Australian Quake community, can you enlighten me a bit about it? Like, is it historically like one of those legendary Quake region, like similar to Russia or the United States? Or is it, or has Quake always been a bit niche there compared to the rest of the world?
What's funny is in Quake Live, I felt America really suffered. There wasn't a lot of good tournaments in Quake Live. So I felt at the time our Australian community was actually stronger than the American community. Not in terms of individual players, like Rafa's obviously the best Quake Live player. But in terms of, like, let's say you took the top 10 Americans versus the top 10 Australians, I'd say it would have been very close at the time. And when Dan went there, he made a real splash when he went to QuakeCon in 2010. And he annoyed, obviously, a lot of Americans. And I'd say outside of Rafa and DanDaKing, it would have been very interesting to see how the rest of Australia, like our best players, would have stacked up against America. So I'd say we've always had a very strong community. We've got a number of international players in Quake Live that had a lot of experience. Python, who came over from Quake 3, he was really good at Quake 3, and he still is good in Quake Live and Quake Champions. But I'd say we've always had a reasonably strong community comparatively to our player base, for sure.
Right. So now, as I've said at the beginning of the interview, you're the co-creator of Four Seasons Gaming. So yeah, a community that organizes tournaments in Australia and basically just aims at promoting this community. So can you tell me a bit about the history of Four Seasons Gaming? Yeah, about its creation, about people that you've worked with, yeah, about your goal with it, basically.
Originally, it was just something that I kind of always wanted to dabble in, going back to the hunger to be an admin and run tournaments. And then, like I said, the community gave me a lot of good vibes, you know, keep encouraging me to run more and saying they're enjoying it. And that sort of drove me for a long time to keep it going. On top of that, I got really fortunate and had a lot of good sponsors come in and throw stuff at me, throw keyboards and mice and and sort of various prizes. And then we had sponsors throwing flights at me as well. And all of that stuff kind of spurred me on to continue growing in the community and in the direction that it was going in. It didn't really have a set, like, this is the end game. It was more just, I was at uni at the time. I was working full time as well. And then outside of those two things, I wanted something else to do with my time. And I was already gaming a lot. So I saw running ForSG as an opportunity to, you know, test myself and improve my organizational skills. And I was working with, I started it on my own, but very quickly I had my partner, Tim, aka Zelo, jump in and get involved and tell me he loved what I was doing and wanted to be a part of it. I had a small team of about 4 or 5. So this is before I knew how to do any web development stuff. I had to get people to help me build the website. And there was a handful of people there, but they're no longer with us anymore. They just sort of piddled off with as Quake Live died out. And then from Quake Live, we were a bit unsure what we were going to do with the community. And then the announcement of Quake Champions came, and we had a conversation about whether or not we'd continue doing what we're doing into Quake Champions or just drop it and just, you know, we had a good year. We had a good 8 years or 6 years or whatever. Let's just move on. But we decided we wanted to see what else was there. And myself and Tim have a lot of interest in other games as well. So we were building the community with the intention to also be adaptable to any other games that might come up or any other games that we're interested in running tournaments for. And I saw that again as another challenge to, you know, later on when we're ready, bridge into other games. So yeah, it's just been mostly lots of encouragement from the community that's driven us, lots of fortunate with sponsors and prizes and stuff like that. And that's really where I've sort of started the fire. In terms of goals and aspirations for where we're heading, we've got some stuff. I don't want to reveal too much, but we've got a dream. It's and a time to reach that dream, and we'll just see how it all plays out.
Okay. So that's a personal question that I'm a bit curious regarding. So yeah, like to take care of Four Seasons Gaming, I mean, you need a lot of skill as a leader, as a content creator. And also, yeah, generally speaking, like taking care of the website, the promotion, and everything, like all the aesthetics, so to basically promote what you create for it. So are those skills that you had before or that you had to learn to do all your work for Four Seasons Gaming?
It's a bit of both. When I was going through uni, I did computer science and multimedia arts. So I was a double degree. So I already had a little bit of multimedia interest. In uni, I majored in 3D animation and digital design. And that's where I sort of already had that background of skills. And the organizational stuff, the tournaments and stuff, I always enjoyed bringing people together, you know, giving not purpose, but, you know, giving something for people to do on the weekends and stuff like that. So those kind of skills were already lingering. I've definitely had to focus a lot on improving those skills. And like I said, I was a little shit when I was 16, and that ego really carried on until at least 24. So I think it's very hard to manage a community when you're starting to build friendships with people. It's hard to set aside your ego, especially when people start arguing and fighting in the community. Like, it's really hard to take, to step back and take like a third perspective approach to situations. But I've had to learn definitely a lot of control, a lot of patience, and a lot of seeing everything from both sides. So I'd say, like, I definitely started off with a skill set that had me in the right direction, but I've had to continuously improve that skill set. I'm always learning Photoshop, video stuff, interviewing. Again, just I'll read something and I'll be like, that was good, or that question was good, or whatever it is. I always sort of try to learn as much as I can from everybody else, and then take the pieces that I like and then apply that to myself, and try really hard to change and stay on the right path. So yeah, that's, I guess, what I've had to do.
So those skills that you've managed to develop, taking care of Four Seasons Gaming, has it helped you outside of the gaming sphere, like for example on your work or other environments?
Yeah, for sure, man. You really have to ground your skills to your core. Like, it has to become second nature. I definitely got fortunate with the opportunity of my work, like how that all came about. But having the skills I did already have, and confidence as well, was absolutely key. Like, yeah, it's hard to explain everything, but for sure, 100% everything that I've learned, I try to apply to my work and outside of work. And it's vice versa as well. Like, I learn a lot of stuff outside of gaming, like whether it's from my work or from people like leaders, mentors, whatever. And then I try to bring that back into the gaming community as best that I can. So it's a bit of both ways, but for sure, man, that it has to be to your core. You have to believe in what you're doing and the direction that you're on. Otherwise, it's just you in the real world, man. People can catch you out so bad if you're just like the fake it till you make it. It only takes you so far. You're always going to reach a point where it's like, all right, you can't fake it anymore. Like, you have to have those skills. You have to have that confidence. You have to be able to talk to people and confront situations and deal with awkward situations, hostile people. I find all these things, it's like a challenge to me. And it's like, I look at it as something that I need to overcome or improve on, learn more about, whatever it is. It's just my philosophy of life is kind of, you just keep continually, gradually improving, learning, changing, etc. So yeah.
Awesome. So basically everything that you do for the community. So as I've said, interviews, yeah, tournaments, promoting all those things. What I'm curious about is, like, can you run me through, like for example, what would be a typical week for Mickzerofive going for SG? Like, what exactly do you do, and how do you go about creating all this content and all those tournaments and everything that you do for a community?
Mm-hmm. So the tournaments aren't just me anymore. I've got a lot of help from our community, or one of our community members, Becky D, who's helped me a lot stay motivated towards running tournaments and, at least putting something out there for people to do. But my regular week will pretty much be work, outside of work, gym, outside of gym, coding or gaming, or learning about gaming, like watching YouTube videos. I'll try to explain it better. So in my week, I probably spend about 15 to 20 hours in web development. So coding the website, or talking about the website with my colleagues and people that I'm getting advice and direction from. Then I probably spend about 10 to 15 to 20 hours watching VODs. So I watch a lot of other games to learn from streams like League of Legends, Overwatch, Counter-Strike, Dota, whatever it is. I like to watch what other people are doing. And like I said before, take little things that I like or learn new things. And then I spend a little bit of time gaming, maybe 10 to 15 hours gaming myself as well. Like, I really find gaming helps me stay mentally challenged in a good way. So like constantly overcoming obstacles, problems, figuring out things, all the beautiful things that we love about online gaming. And outside of that, they're probably the three main things that I do. So gaming, watching games, and coding. They're the main three that I contribute towards 4SG. Specifically to content, so I only really like to produce content around the time of big tournaments. So I've got some questions to ask, And I try to get someone that I haven't had on before in the interview. And normally I try to pick like one American, one European. So I'm sort of getting a star or a player that both regions are interested in, and then just hitting them with a bunch of questions about either their career, like a little bit about the upcoming changes in Quake, the upcoming tournaments, you know, how they're feeling about the scene in general, everything like that. But yeah, the content stuff's mostly like no one else is doing it, so I'll do it kind of thing. There's a couple of good European interviewers who are putting in some work and some time, but I feel like there's a lacking area in Quake where we can be building more relationships and connections with the players through interviews and stuff like that, and really, you know, creating this stardom around them.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna bounce on what you've just said. But yeah, like not having enough interviews and not having enough communication with the players in a way as content creators. Now, that's what I felt. Like if I go back, because the first interview I've conducted was at ESWC 2018, and I got to talk with Garpy, Razy, and Nico, and I had to like prepare some questions because I just like wanted to take the occasion to talk with them, and like when they gave me their answers to those like specific questions, which was like I tried to make it like rather in depth, like, regarding specific elements of the meta, regarding their approach to the game, and I realized that those players like had such amazing things to say, and that basically like those players had fascinating things to talk about and to explain, to give their point of view as professional players, because those are people who spend an incredible amount of hours playing those games, so the way they see it is like very different from us casuals. And also the fact that they compete and that they make a lot of them make a living out of it, like has a really big impact on the way they see the game. And that the problem is that we've got the players, but we just don't have the people asking the questions, basically. And that was a shame, because like the community enjoys this type of content, enjoys basically having an idea of the way a player thinks. And so that's why I decided starting this interview series, and I'm glad to see that's like it's sort of helping a bit, and that we've also got people like you who've been doing interviews for a long time. And so I just wanted to say I totally agree with what you said, and that it's always good to promote the players and give people an idea of the way they think.
I'm so close to other scenes. I watch content creators for League of Legends especially, and it's a struggle. I get it, that it's a struggle to get to events and interview players and create content and survive off the content without having a full-time job. I definitely get that. I feel like ID Software in the first couple of years of Quake Champions really let this slip. And despite me being incredibly vocal about it, they finally sort of started to come around with the latest bunch of tournaments where they sat down with the players, interviewed them. You know, you got to see and hear the stuff that you're talking about, where how smart are they? They talk about different areas of the game, what you've never even thought about. And it's just like, whoa, like really? I didn't even think about it like that. There's like so many levels to the game that you just really don't even appreciate until you hear them talk. And that I've had a lot of fortune living with DanDaKing, the Australian player who's at the top at the moment in the Australian scene. And if we talk about the game, like just even listening to him talk about the game, it's ridiculous. And I ask him the most ridiculous questions as well. And just hearing the answers is exactly like you said. You're just like really amazed. You just never even thought about it. It's like a totally different approach to the game that we could be getting out of these players, and it could make us appreciate the players more, make us appreciate the game more, make us more invested, emotionally connected to the players in the game. And what you're doing exactly right, creating content. We need more of it, but I understand that it's very hard for people, and it's definitely like a snowball thing. You know, you can't just put out a video and boom, 10,000 views. Like it really is a slow, gradual, ergonomic growth that it has to happen.
So now, you were talking about DanDaKing, of course, hands down the best Australian player right now in Quake Champions. So he's had some good results, especially DreamHack Winter 2017, and also in 2v2 with Steege, representing Corvidae. yeah, they've done like some really good stuff, and DC definitely proving that Australian is yeah, like a strong region in terms of Quake. But I feel like Australian Quake, the Australian Quake champion scene hasn't yet reached like that level, basically, like that level to truly I feel like contest with like especially the Americans or like the top European teams. And I feel like the Australians are like, how can I say this, like a bit struggling in a way, despite definitely like showing some really good potential. And so I was interested in having your take on this matter, and basically just comparing the Australian region on a competitive aspect compared to Europeans and Americans.
There's a number of factors why Australia's lagging behind, I guess you could say, the rest of the regions. Obviously, player base is one. So the more players you have, the players internally raise the competition. Do you know what I mean? Like players that really strive to get to the top, they put in the hours, then someone else puts in the hours. You've got a challenge, you've got to improve, overcome that challenge. That sort of intense competition just doesn't exist due to numbers. And I think also logistics plays a massive part. Like it's hard. We've got to sit on 30-hour flights to come overseas to play in these tournaments. So it's not like we can just go, oh, this weekend I'll go to Europe and play against the best European players and get better. It's like, all right, there's 1 or 2 events a year that we're got the money for flights, got the energy to actually go 30 hours to another region and play. And because of that, those sort of factors, it makes it really hard for us to hit that next level consistently. I would say in duel, Dan, I don't know if you watched the most recent tournament, but Dan did really well versus Claus. He lost 3-2, 3-2. Yeah. And I think he lost to Kilson in close games as well, who was the only person in the whole tournament to take a map off Rafa. So I think if Dan maybe had a different route, you know, you can play out scenarios forever, but I think if he had a different route, it might have been a different tournament for him. But I think like Rafa, like not taking anything away from him because he puts in the work, but he also has that competition to drive him. DanDaKing, Yenim, Effortless, Saigib, Vedmedic, like Brick, like all these players that have played for a while, you know, and some of them that are just really fast-tracked, like Saigib and Vedmedic in particular. Rafa gets to play against these people every day, every week, and they're all really good players in their right, you know, on the right day. So having that consistent high level of practice really elevates you. Rafa's on another level for sure. Definitely really admire Rafa and his work ethic. And he's, it's funny because we always talk about fatality, right? Being the best Quake player ever, and his motto, practice, practice, practice. Rafa's the best Quake player ever. And Rafa's motto, I believe, isn't just practice, practice, practice. It's constructive practice. Putting the time and the effort into strengthening all your weaknesses, putting practice in the right place. You know, you can keep playing and practicing just your aim, you know, and be the world's best aimer. But if you can't time and you can't control the map, you're not learning anything. You're never going to beat everyone. And I feel like Rafa practices every single discipline of the game to the absolute extreme. That is just, it is practice, yeah, for sure. But the right practice, I think, is what's important. And without putting words in Rafa's mouth, of course, I feel like that's what makes him so good. And we can do that here, of course. But like I said, the level of competition, like how good you're going to get is really capped out. But just quickly on this, I remember when we were in Cologne 2011, I was with Dan at IEM in Germany. And I remember he was playing against Sparty or Cypher at the time in the group of death. You probably haven't heard of this tournament, but Cooler was behind Dan while he was playing. And Cooler's just like, where does he learn these things? You know, like, because Dan doesn't play against anybody of that caliber, but he just intuitively kind of worked it out and from watching VODs or whatever. And I remember when Cooler said that, I was just like, yeah, he's right. it's so hard for anyone to get to that same level because of this hindrance on, you know, the player pool and logistics of Australia. So, but I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there is a good answer. Even if you poured money into our community, it still wouldn't fix this, like this gap of the top 10 Australian players and the top 10 everywhere else. I think Dan's close. I think a couple of other players can get close, but I think without that consistent honing of your skills, it will be very hard for them to win outright. Like they could do it, but it's just they'd have to be on their game, hitting shots. You know, they'd have to be playing so much better than their opponents. Yeah.
All right. So now, going into 2019, I've been interested in having like your predictions, especially running the Australian Quake Community. Do you think 2019 will be like the year for Australians to really stand out on Quake Champions? Like, do you think, you know, yeah, we'll like start seeing those three like top 5, top 3 performances on a regular basis, and also like with CTF as well. I'm curious, like what, because it's like basically certain now that CTF will be the new team mode because 2v2 was removed from Quake Champions as a ranked game mode. So yeah, I'm curious to all this, like, yeah, your predictions for Australian Quake in 2019.
I mean, it really depends if I play again because I was machined in CTF. But nah, look, I'm a realist, and I will say that I don't think it's going to get better. I believe in my heart that it's going to be more difficult. The same reason. The duel scene is easy because it's 1 versus 1, right? The CTF is 4 versus 4. So unless we have this miraculous, overwhelming amount of popularity come into the game here in Australia, it's going to be very hard for us to produce high-level teams. And even if we just get one stacked team of, you know, the 4 best players, in Australia, it's like, who are they going to practice against? You know, who are they going to get? Who's going to challenge them to get to that next level? So I would say that wise, we're going to fall behind for sure in CTF. And duel, I mean, it's always been the same kind of story. Like Dan's really the only one that's been at that level to look dangerous. And that's just the way that Dan is. And I can't see in my head the next sort of top 4, you know, Stage, Dan, Stage, Zanaku, Python, those kind of guys who are just below Dan. I can't see them just getting this, you know, this surge of enthusiasm to hit that next level or get as good as Dan. So my head will say that it'll be worse next year in 2019. And it really depends on how appealing the tournaments are for Dan that he'll go. If QuakeCon's $1 million, then he'll of course go. If it's not, then it might be hard to drag him out of bed. Do you know what I mean? Drag him into to do this, because it's like a 30-hour flight for a grueling weekend of non-stop gaming against people that are really, really challenging. You've got to figure things out that you're not exposed to here locally. Once you get over there, you learn, like your boot camp, you learn so much. But that's a grueling mental process as well, right? Because you're learning, like you've got to learn what to catch up kind of thing in such a short span of time. So that's definitely not easy. So I would say 2019 looks a little grim for us unless there's some massive tournament announcements with wicked prize pools and everyone just gets motivated to come play. Here locally, I'm trying to get some money into the scene. We had some unfortunate problems in 2018 with money, which didn't go our way. I was hoping money might be an encouragement for those next top 4 players to try to reach that next level, but we didn't get the money in. I don't know if we'll get the money in next year either. It really just depends on the success of the game at this point.
So to finish on a more positive note now, is there anything like that you're looking forward to regarding Quake and just basically like Australian gaming in 2019?
In general or just Quake?
Like say like yeah, first just Quake and then in general, I guess.
Okay. Um, I'm interested to watch the tournaments, the CTF tournaments for sure. Back in Quake Live, I did a lot of analytical breakdown videos of games, particularly TDM of like, let's say like Noctis, Latromi, and I loved really understanding all the little micro decisions that they make in game. I think people take those kind of things for granted. Like they just watch a player and they're just like, oh, you made a mistake here or whatever it is, but they don't understand the thought process that went into decision making. So I personally really love seeing that. I think CTF will be interesting. I haven't played too much of it. It's only been out for a day for us here, but from what I see so far, there's a very interesting attack and defend style to it. I'll be very keen to watch the videos and the streams and the tournaments. Playing wise, like I said, I hope money comes into the scene. I think without the money, it's going to look grim. With money, even then, we've got to play our cards right. I hope that just an overwhelming amount of people start coming back or get into the game because of CTF, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And then talking about other games, for sure, man, the Australian scenes, I watch it very closely and I see everyone else struggling with the exact same problems that I've noticed and that I've struggled with, where like logistics is a big thing around Australia. Like all the states and territories are so spaced out. It's very hard to get everyone in one spot for like LAN events and stuff like that. We're starting to see kind of what's happening in Europe and America, where sporting teams and stuff are starting to invest in esports teams. That's been very interesting, but still for me, I think it's a bit underdeveloped. It's a bit young and the money's hitting a wall in a sense. You know, it's just like a lot of sporting teams are throwing money at esports teams, but they're not really getting any benefit from it just yet. I mean, similar problems exist in Europe and North America, but I'm staying very close to the scenes in other games here just to watch and see how all that unfolds. There's a big push from manufacturers to get, you know, their brand on stuff in teams, and I think they'll try to drive a lot of these tournaments and prize pools and stuff like that. We just saw a recent Dota tournament. AMD put 25 or 50 grand towards, you know, to try and see what would happen with that. Personally, that was a little bit of a risky move, and I don't know that they got the benefit that they wanted from that. So could leave a sour taste in some sponsors' mouths, you know, could be an opportunity for improvement and learning about the scene and about like what went wrong or what could they have done better. I'm also very interested in following the League of Legends scene. My little brother, he's 20 and he's heavily involved in League of Legends. He wants to be a pro gamer for at least a couple of years of his life. So I'm hanging on that the league scene survives and grows. And I love League of Legends, and I'll do what I can to support him in the game. Counter-Strike's going to be pretty big here, I think. The IEM stuff in Sydney. IEM have thrown a lot of money into Australian tournaments and flying over some international teams. I think that appeal for, you know, bringing over some big European names or big American name teams and players has an appeal for us Australians. Like we want to go watch, you know, your Team Liquids and your Cloud9s and stuff like that go play. So I think from that aspect, gaming will survive here, as long as I already think they've got one planned for 2019. So Counter-Strike will be good. There's a couple of other groups like Gfinity and ESL, Cyber Gamer and stuff like that. They're really putting in the groundwork to try and ergonomically build the Australian gaming scene through the same problems, like I said, that I've already kind of identified. I wish them the best. I'll do anything that I can to help them. Like, I think in order for us as a Australian gaming region to grow, we all have to help each other, all have to be positive and you know, if I help Gfinity grow or Cyber Gamer grow or ESL grow, that in a way will indirectly help me grow. And I see it that way. They don't see it, or they don't always see it that way. There's more of like a rivalry between all of these organizations that I just listed. I'm hoping they can flip the script on their attitude and mentality towards that and really start, banding together and helping each other grow. And if we can work together as a scene, we can do something, not as to the scale of Europe and America, but something worthwhile that we will feel proud of investing our time in and representing, sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting, man. I that's pretty much all I can say on it. I love watching all games, and I'm really enthusiastic and hopeful, but I'm still reserved in making a big commitment to, say, throwing away my life and just jumping into gaming 2 feet into the 2 feet first. I really want to just see how the next couple of years play out. 2020 is my year, and I think 2020 will be a telling year for us Australians. So yeah.
So now, before we finish this interview, do you have any special thanks, some shout outs, or any final words?
I was just saying thanks for you for conducting the interview, because I don't get this opportunity to speak like this very often. I wish you success, and I hope that you encourage other people to start making content as well. And just, yeah, I hope the Quake scene can help. I hope all the regions can help each other grow and survive. And I hope the developers get the game right. So that's an important part as well.